Hello, welcome to Focus. I'm your host, Mark Warnock, and today we're here with the folks from the Summers Advocate for Social Justice. We're here with Giselle Genece, the chairperson, and Diane Lopes, the vice chair. Thank you both for giving us some time to talk today.
Thank you.
And first off, we'll start with Giselle. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the organization itself?
Okay, absolutely. Mark, we're happy to be here and we're happy to talk about the wonderful work that we are engaged in and that we have been doing for pretty much over a year now. So following the George Floyd murder by police officer Derek Chauvin, I was very angered, like many Americans, like many people here in Summers, in our surrounding communities, very angered with what I was witnessing on the television. And for quite some time, I've been involved in, of course, like politics and other things, but not really heavily involved in anything. And after seeing that incident, for me, it was an eye opener. I could not believe, of course, again, like most people, what I was seeing. And I thought, this is the time for me to really stand up and speak out. And of course, that meant for me rallying a group of people to help me do this work. And so what I did was I reached out to a friend or two. I reached out to someone, she lived here in town, but at the time she was in New York City. And I mentioned the idea of wanting to start a group, a local Black Lives Matter group. And she said, no, actually, I take that back. I wanted to do something. I wanted to go out and show how angry I was about what was happening and what we needed to do to break the chain of racism and institutional racism and all the other forms of racism that's happening against Blacks and other people of color in this country. And so she said, why not just start your own group? And I thought, oh, wow, that's a really good idea. How about you do it with me? And she says, yes, if you start it, I will do it with me. I will do it with you. And that's how this group was born. I reached out to my son and daughter. Both of them were in college at the time. And I asked them to send out messages to their friends, many of whom have graduated from Summers High School. And we were able to engage within 1 week, probably about 35 or so young people, high school and college students, to come together and support us. And of course, word got out to the community. And of course, some of the older folks, people my age, the adults really wanted to join in. And as more and more people heard about what we wanted to do, they started coming to meetings. I would have the socially distanced meetings in my backyard. Everyone just bring a chair, and we organized our first protest. And from there, we've just been moving on to bigger and better things.
Wow, that's crazy. Very grassroots. That's awesome. So Diane, tell me a little about how you got involved with the organization.
Sure. So similar to what Giselle said, I too was very angry and upset and horrified at the murder of George Floyd, and also felt that need to do more. And so I've lived in Summers for about 28 years. I raised 2 children through the school system here, and I knew that there have been racism issues in town. And I felt like, my mind was like, I want to take on the world, but I also realized, what can I really affect change? And I said, I want to work locally. And I then started to hear about the great work Giselle was doing. Giselle and I didn't officially know each other. Our kids are exactly the same ages. And so, we'd probably seen each other at open houses or school events. But I saw the posts that were coming through on Facebook and such. And I said, sign me up. And she invited me to her home, and we socially distanced and sat in the backyard, and we were like fast friends within a few minutes. And here we are. So yes. I'm thrilled that she's done this, and I'm thrilled that she's allowed me to be a part of it with her.
Oh, I was just so happy to have you. I mean, and I think Diane was one of the first adults that actually came over, and you're right, she came over with a pot of flowers, And we sat in the backyard and we talked, and I saw the passion coming through from her, and she's been with me ever since. And so when I asked if she would like to be, actually, we had a meeting about, sharing responsibilities, and she right away agreed that she would be the vice chair. So we call her Veep. Thank you, Veep.
Thank you.
That's awesome. That's a cool nickname. Great TV show as well, by the way.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you guys, you touched on a little bit at the beginning about how you guys kind of built the base of what you got going on there. But tell me about how, like, the difference, like, or difficulty it was with this past year, everything that's been going on with COVID and everything, how that was of kind of starting an organization basically from scratch during a pandemic.
I'm going to jump in, Giselle. I would say this, and this, I don't know if you'll agree with me or not, G, but I don't really think that it held us back. As she mentioned, we had the social distance meetings. We came with a mask and a chair, and we sat 6 or 10 feet apart from each other. We've had protests, 3, at this point, and people wore masks. I don't really think that there was anything that held us back, in my opinion. We did meetings on Zoom. I think that we miss each other because we've all become, our core group committee, we've become like family. And we keep saying, like, wow, I'm closer with some of you all than I am with some family. And we're in desperate need to hug each other at this point. It's a unique dichotomy of, we've all known each other now a year, and we've spent a lot of time together socially distanced or on Zoom, but we're all very gregarious social people, and I know we're excited when eventually we can really hug. But I would say, I think that I'm pretty proud of what we've been able to accomplish, despite what's been going on with the pandemic. Would you agree, Giselle?
100% Veep. And if you think back to that very first protest, we put that together in 2 weeks. I thought we needed more time, but the young adults in the group said, no, we can put this together in 2 weeks. And we had over 400 people attend that first event. And it was just amazing. I'm getting goosebumps as I think about it. As I watched, and at the end of the protest, we knelt down for 8 minutes. Maybe it wasn't 8 minutes, but to see a whole line of hundreds of people along Main Street here in the center of town, it was just amazing. I was so touched because for me, it was just reassuring to know that there were so many people right here in Somers, because we know the reputation that small towns tend to have about racism, around racism, right? And for me, it was just reassuring to find this group of like-minded folks who wanted to do something, who wanted change and still want change to happen. So it was just, it was very easy actually for us to do this. So I agree with you, Diane, not a problem at all, no challenges.
All right, well, going off that, I'm going to change my last question a little bit to what I would usually ask. What is the future for your guys' group? Like, what do you guys plan to do in the future to get the word out more about your organization?
Well, at the moment, as you know, with this town Facebook page, there are numerous Facebook pages here in town. And there are some really racist people on the forum, and they are really blatant about their racism. And we like Diane mentioned, I mean, we have children. She and I both have children who have gone through the summer schools. And my children, being children of color, have experienced, especially my daughter, certain degrees of racism in school. And we are seeing that continues to happen, and that we are even hearing about, like, when the schools try to do have, say, courageous conversations about race and so forth. I mean, people are actually keeping their children at home. And about this critical race theory, there's so many people that are actually trying to demonize what the superintendent is doing to try to make sure that summer schools are equitable. So we feel that one of the great ways to really try to stamp out racism is to try to get to our children and make sure that our children in schools are being taught the real history of what's happening in this country, and that our children of color do not have to feel as if they're second-class citizens. I know that, for example, I'm an educator, and I know, and you know, my background is English and so forth. And I recall reading books that they've talked called, you know, the classics, where the N word, I mean, it's just it's what they call good literature. It does something to people of color, and for children to sit around and of course, I personally feel as if it and Diane, please feel free to jump in whenever you can. That it makes white children or non-children of color, it gives them that sense of, you know, hey, maybe we're better, you know, there's something about us. And they embrace that, you know, maybe we're at the top of the racial hierarchy system. I really do believe that. And we need to do something about that. We need to get rid of these old textbooks in schools. We need to stamp out those curriculums that really teach what's not really true about American history. And we need to teach the truth, because it's only when we teach the truth that we can actually come together and also make sure that education is equitable for children of color, and that kids who are coming into our district to go to school are not faced with racism and so forth. I mean, you know, for years, Somerset's schools have had issues of, you know, writing the N word on bathroom walls, and actually calling kids the N words, or someone dressing up in an ape suit. As a matter of fact, when my daughter was in school and walked behind my daughter, mimicking the sounds of an ape, something like that. And so we have so many incidences of racism in school. This is public education. This is not private education. You know, I pay, and Diane pays, and many of us pay so that all kids can be educated. And this is not, so, you know, all kids should be equally educated, and all kids should feel welcome in the classroom. And this education should be provided by teachers who are tolerant and educators who are tolerant.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, that's one of the reasons why I felt so passionate about being involved in this locally, because there are all of these experiences that young people have had in our school system. And one of our protests that we had, it was the second or third, we invited people to speak. And we had a couple of young people who were a part of the school choice program who came and chose to come to Summers from, you know, other communities, and to listen to the stories that they tell about the blatant racism and hatred and what they experienced come here. I mean, I was so sad, you know, and then starting to peel back the onion to say, what is it about the school system in our town and such that makes it okay? And, you know, things like the lack of discipline for kids that have done these, you know, these horrible acts and such. So your question is about like what's next and what's for the future. Is we very much would like to work with, you know, the school system, the Board of Ed, what have you, to execute exactly what Giselle is talking about, right? We'd like to execute change. We've partnered with, you know, as we talked a little bit about our sister towns, you know, Ellington and Suffield and Stafford, and great partners. And we have listening conversations. We talked about the Juneteenth discussion that we're hosting for Summers specifically, but we'll be continuing to partner with these listening conversations. We need more dialogue. We need to invite more people from the community to come out and have an open mind and actively listen. As Giselle mentioned, there are many people, you know, in town that are very, you know, blatantly racist, and we need for them to come and listen and have an open mind. So we plan to host more listening sessions as well, and just start to really branch out and drive change.
Yes. And one other thing, so we just mentioned the schools, right? And there's also a need for us. We've actually been trying to get through to the leadership in the town and town government. And we have gotten no support from our Republican leaders in town. And this is really not political. It's just that they are pretty much the leaders here in town. We feel that they have dismissed us. So for example, there was an incident that occurred, and so, we don't need to talk about dates, but there was an incident that occurred where a man in town, he defaced Trump signs and wrote Black Lives Matter on the signs. And so the idea behind that is that he wanted to give us a bad name. He wanted us to look really bad in the eyes of our community members. And the Republican town committee dismissed him, and actually they tried to hide the incident under the rug. And so what they did was actually they failed to file charges against this man because they said that those were his signs, since the guy was Republican and the signs were put up by the Republican town committee. So we need a town that really is going to come together and embrace all people and show that they care about every citizen here in town, regardless of what they look like, regardless of their economic background. And so there's a lot more for us in our future. So trying to get the town to see the need to hire people of color. As a matter of fact, we have maybe perhaps just one person of color working in our school district. That's a major problem. So our kids need to see more people of color. There are many of us that are in fantastic careers, doing wonderful things, and we are just not what was portrayed, especially in the 80s and 90s and so forth in the media. And when kids begin to see professionals like me, doing wonderful things, perhaps it might change their perspective. And one thing I can say, and one thing that a lot of the young folks said, is that they felt that they did not get a real education in Summers. They felt that it was when they left Summers to go off to college that they really felt that they are getting a true education. So in other words, the education is so whitewashed, and we're talking about history in itself. So many people are even finding out today so many things about what has happened in our history that people had no idea even existed. And that was the impetus behind why many young people and even the adults decided to join and help us in our movement to change things in Summers and in our local surrounding towns, and naturally in our state and then our country.
Exactly. That's awesome. There's so much history, not just in Summers, but all the towns, like you were saying, around that I think a lot of people don't know about, not just this history as a whole. People don't know about the local town histories and all the different places, and like the Summers Mill and all the history of that and everything. And there's a lot of great stuff that people can look into for that. One thing I like to ask people at the very end of the interview, which I don't tell them about until now because it's a surprise question. What is the one thing that you are most grateful for during this past year and everything that we went through?
I feel like Diane and I are going to have the same answer. Diane, do you want to go first?
Yes, we are. I have found my people. I am so incredibly grateful to have, stumbled into this Summers Advocates for Social Justice. I have learned over the last year, about people that I've known for 20 years, who I've realized have very different views and values than I do. And I've walked away from friendships, but I've gained so much more. And like I said earlier, this group, this committee that we have is family. And I feel like I've known them all for my entire life, but it's been a year. And, to me, I just feel like I'm among people who, have the same mission and vision and want to affect change. And there are people that care. And, we've had a lot of things happen within our group, illnesses, deaths in the family, and we've really been there for each other. And I'm just so grateful.
I told you we would have the exact same answer because we continue to talk about it all the time. How we are so grateful that we are really a wonderful group. And I do want to tell you that with the George Floyd incident, and then seeing, reading the stuff that I've been seeing on Facebook, it's almost like my eyes were opened for the first time. And I began to see some of the posts by people that I called friends. And for me, I felt, and even some neighbors, and for a time, I felt isolated. I felt isolated until I met this group. And this is my true family outside of my blood family. We are so happy to be together, to engage in this work together. I just love them. We are family. And so that is what I am grateful for.
Well,
And
thank you
that
so much.
together
Go ahead.
when together we can love each other, we can find time to, and we can make change happen.
That is awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for both of you for coming on. It's the Summers Advocates for Social Justice. You can find them online at summersadvocates.org. And we'll have all the other information, how you can reach out to them as well at the end of the show. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all next time here on Focus.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.